All right, we are live with Roasters Marketplace Meet Your Roasters. This is our first episode of Meet Your Roasters. We've got two on the show tonight. We're meeting with Kyle and David from Atypical Coffee in Little Rock, Arkansas. Hold on a second. I've got another feed that crashed here. Just give me 1 second and I'm back up. All right, I'm Chris from Roasters Marketplace. If y'all tuned in before, if it's your first time tuning in, y'all know the story about this. I'll hit it up real quick so we can build a few viewers as we wait on people to get on here. So when I founded Roasters Marketplace a couple months ago, I really wanted a place where I could showcase the story of these people I was meeting, these small batch coffee roasters all over the United States that I was talking to on the phone and getting to know face to face, and just wanted to retell their story because I would call these guys and ladies, and we would end up talking for an hour and a half about coffee and life and it just different things that revolve that coffee brings together. And it was just something that I wanted to share with everybody. And that's why we're here, 2 months later with Roasters Marketplace and Atypical Coffee sitting down for Meet Your Roasters. And y'all are also our featured roaster this month. So y'all have been sending out coffee, a couple bags to our Roaster's Choice subscribers. So real quick, introduce yourselves. Let me know which one's who's who sitting there, and a little bit about your story, how y'all met, and how y'all got into roasting coffee.
Sure. I'll start. My name's Kyle. I'm married and have 3 kids, and I've been in the coffee world in various facets for about 15 years now. Everything from barista to now roasting, and so yeah, I decided about 8 years ago that I wanted to pursue a career in coffee, and so that's what I set my sights on. And so yeah, I'm now roasting full time, and I'm also a curator, so the sensory side of things is really appealing to me as well. And so and also coffee education, helping people learn more about coffee and discover some of the intricacies that I've discovered has been really fun to be a part of. So I'll let Dave kind of share his part, and then we can talk about what.
Yeah, well, so I got in it from a completely different way. I lived overseas, lived in Asia for a while, and got to travel in a lot of the different sort of the coffee belt areas in Asia, and Laos and Vietnam and Thailand, some of these places, Yunnan, China. And so it really, I mean, I'd always been just more of a casual, to this point, a casual coffee and tea drinker, but it was just fascinating being out there at Origin, seeing the coffee fields. And then for me, it was just sort of starting to bounce around ideas in my head as far as what were different ways that one could get engaged into the industry, and was there a different way of doing things that could sort of use the power of the market, power of the consumers to help the communities and the farmers, the producers out there growing it. And so all that was kind of bouncing around in my head without any, coffee industry experience. When kind of wrapping around back around to your question about Atypical, when I moved to Little Rock, Arkansas, a few years back, and Kyle and I went to college together, further back in time than we would care to admit, and had sort of sporadically kept in contact through the years. And so when I moved back to Little Rock, we sort of reconnected, and then from my perspective, it was the luckiest situation to find myself in, because here's a college buddy of mine who's in coffee, and that was the very thing that I was, like I said, would been rattling around in my head for a couple of years. So that was kind of the birth of the discussions anyway. for Atypical? You can
And
elaborate.
so we took a trip to Honduras with an NGO that David is on the board with, and we met some farmers there, some coffee farmers, and we developed some relationships with them that we hoped would turn into something, but we didn't really know. And we got back from the trip, and David and I started talking more and more, and we kind of came to a place where we're like, man, I think this would be kind of fun to try, see if we can make it work. And so we sent some messages back to our friends in Honduras, and we started working to get coffee from them, like to source coffee directly from these folks that we had met. And we started asking connections that we've met throughout our lives, hey, do you have anybody that you know that's in coffee? And so that's our preferred model, is buying directly from farmers that we've met or that we're 1 degree removed from. So like in our with our best efforts, the most money is going to the farmers. So that's kind of how we got to where we are now.
And that's I love how the fact that you go on your page, or you go on your, it's one of the things I first noticed about your website when I went on, before I even contacted you, when I was creeping y'all on Instagram. I went on, and you didn't have pictures of coffee. You had the stories, you didn't have your bags up. You had the pictures of the farmers, and you had the farms, and a little bit about where it was coming from, and a little bit about how you met the farmer. And it was just a really, really well thought out way of presenting your view on that direct to the farmer way of sourcing the coffee, without even you didn't even have to say it. It's like, look, hey, this is where we went and got the coffee. This is where we went and talked to them. So that was really cool. I'm going to back you up to a question, because somebody's going to be sitting there watching this saying, what's a Curator? So explain what a Curator is real quick before we start moving up in the questions. And that is actually part of the next question. Anyway, what sort of formal training do y'all have in coffee? So tell us a little bit more about being a Curator and what that process entails.
Sure. Yeah. So a lot of times the Q graders are likened to sommeliers in wine. So essentially, there's an organization called Coffee Quality Institute, and they have a course that you have to take to show that you can taste coffee, identify different elements in coffee, spot defects. So it's essentially a professional coffee taster, and the term is Q grader. That is what someone who finishes the course and passes comes out with. That's the title that they come out with.
How much coffee did you have to drink to in the course?
We were doing. We probably drank. So you have to do cuppings from all of the different coffee growing regions. So there's Central and South America, Africa, Asia, and then you have to do naturals as well. And so we're doing cuppings of at least 6 coffees in each of those regions. Excuse me. And so yeah, I mean 5 cups of each, so 30 cups by 4, at least 120, plus all the other. So it was ridiculous amounts. There are points when you've tasted so much that, and you're being asked to identify which cup is different out of a set of 3 in a triangulation, and you've tasted so much that everything tastes exactly the same, and you have to just go with your gut, like, okay, this one has a little bit of difference. I think this one might be it. So
yeah,
pretty intense.
Yeah, it looks. I've looked over the course here. There's a local blended in cafe where I took my introduction to coffee class with SCA. They do the full course. I'll probably end up taking it this year or next year just to get it in and help me with what I'm trying to do. That's
Sure.
awesome. Um, so when you go to these farms, were you cupping there? Were y'all able to cup the products there, the beans?
Uh, it's No, we didn't cup. I mean, we did have some coffee on the farm that was from that farm, but it wasn't cupping. We weren't able to cup at origin. Later at a different location, but on the farm, it was a bit more, out in the actual mountainside essentially.
Yeah.
And um, the setups are not. I mean, these are small plot farmers, and so the setup isn't really conducive to being able to do a cupping. But when we certainly did try it at origin at different
So
locations.
when we're talking about small plots or a micro lot coffee, what size would you say these farms are plant wise or acreage that y'all are sourcing your coffee from?
So the finca that we're featuring right now, the lot that we're buying from off of their finca is there's probably I would say probably 10,000 pounds coming off of that. Um, maybe not quite that much, but and so it's pretty small. But like the ones that some of the other ones that we visited, I mean, they might have like 200 trees, right? And you might get like a kilo or like 2 pounds off of one tree. So
Yeah.
maybe like 400 pounds of coffee of cherries, right? Which
Yeah.
then like get that down to the seed, and it's not a whole lot.
Yeah, I was telling one of my buddies that are like, well, what's the deal with these single origins and micro lots? I'm like, literally, we could probably go back and tell you what hillside or
Mhm.
on this mountain, on this valley, it came from 300 meters up the road here from this guy's farmhouse on this one hillside. That's how precise these lots are on some of these coffees, which is why some of them are, really expensive because they're only getting 200 trees are producing that, you know,
Yeah.
200 pounds of coffee for the whole entire year, which is absolutely amazing when you look at it in the scale of mass produced coffee farms like in Brazil that are hundreds of thousands of acres and
Hmm.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
um, what is your favorite? We're going to move ahead a little bit here on the questions because we've covered the ones that we already started with here. Um, what is your favorite part of the roasting process, and how do y'all go about roasting? So, do y'all always roast together? Is it, hey, I'm going to take this week and you're going to take next week? I know both y'all are really busy with careers and families and everything. How do y'all split that up, or do you split it up?
So Kyle is the roaster. So I'll let him answer that question. But just to set that up, he is the roaster, and then ultimately I'm the one sending it out, for example, to the subscribers and various other roles as well. But Kyle will answer the question here on the roasting.
Yeah. So what we found actually is we have like our palettes combined have become something that we've really started to lean on a lot more. We've found that we're pretty calibrated in terms of what we like and what we think will sell well, and even without like one of the things that we always want to try to make sure people know is like you don't have to have all of the certifications and all of the training to be able to taste coffee and know what you like. And so like even without Dave being in the coffee industry, like he's been somebody who has been able to come in and like he's able to taste good coffee and know what good coffee is and know when there's something that's not quite right about it. And so that's been, for me, that's one of the funnest parts of the roasting process, is getting samples in, which probably when we get finished with this, we'll be cupping a sample that we got, a couple of samples we got from Uganda, and we'll be tasting those. And so that's one of the funnest parts for us, or for me. I'll let Dave tell you what his best part or favorite part of it is, but yeah, we sample roast when they come in, and then I'm doing batches on a P12, Probot P12 roaster for our production roast. And so we rent time right now. We don't have a brick and mortar. We exist in the virtual world of the web, and at a farmer's market, and some retail spots around town. And so yeah, we're trying to keep it lean at the moment, and there's that threshold that you end up reaching at some point, hopefully, where like it costs more to rent than it does to like you actually need to own a roaster, right? Rather than renting time. But that threshold is a ways off for us at the moment. But that's kind of what our system looks like right now.
Awesome. We've got to go ahead, David.
I was just gonna say, kind of piggybacking off of what Kyle was saying, but I mean, one of the most enjoyable and really kind of fascinating things from my perspective has been this trying all of these samples, and it's been really surprising in a pleasant way, as Kyle and then I individually tried to sort of put together a supply chain through contacts that we had, and then getting these samples in. And then some of them I think will still come to fruition. Some of them different origins around the world. Some of them, may not, and some of them already have. But getting those samples in and trying them, and just the fascinating part of it, of the uniqueness of each of these origins. And that's one thing that we, being atypical, one of the things that we're doing atypically is origins that you don't typically see in the U.S. And so, Myanmar, Honduras, those are two that we have now. We've had a slew of others, Yunnan, China being one that was quite popular recently, and Dominican Republic. And so we try to bring coffees that people don't normally see in the U.S. And along with the enjoyment of sampling these different origins, and just kind of learning the uniqueness of each of these places, and the flavors that each brings, has been at places like at farmers markets, or at other stores that we're on the shelves, where we're working with folks coming in and having them sample these different origins. And so often someone will say, I can't tell. Like, I just want the strongest thing you got, or I just want whatever, the darkest thing you got, or whatever their preconceived notions are, what they want. And then we'll kind of talk to them and say, well, here's what we do. We've got these unique origins. Why don't you just try them? Just try them side by side. And I think that's getting back to your original question. What's your favorite part? For me, that would be it, is when they do that. And so often they'll kind of sit there and they'll try it, and they'll start kind of talking with you. Oh, well, okay, that one does have some sweetness on it, and that one has a little more, and they'll talk through what they're getting out of it, and begin to discover how different a Myanmar and a Honduran are from each other. And I think that's been some of the most rewarding times for me, is working with folks and kind of helping them to begin to pick that out. And one of the things we've always talked about is making specialty coffee approachable. That it doesn't, as Kyle already alluded to, that it doesn't have to be. You don't have to necessarily have all the coffee industry lingo down to just be able to learn how to enjoy a good cup of coffee. And I think that's been probably one of the more rewarding things for me is like I said, helping people to do that.
Yeah, that's definitely one of my goals here for it is to kind of introduce people like myself who 6 to 8 months ago really had no clue about, I thought I was doing pretty good because I was buying the beans out of the bin at the grocery store and grinding them myself and just kind of dumping and not really paying attention. and and then I got into this and I'm like, I've been missing this all along. Not Why can't I just go back and start having really good coffee a long time ago
Yeah.
as opposed to just recently? Because some of the flavors you get and some of the I made, I think it was a Guatemalan and a Colombian blend that I have downstairs, and I was cooking breakfast and I was making coffee this morning, and I was just sitting. I was like, okay, it doesn't get any better than this because this is the coffee was blooming, and the smell was just going everywhere, and the bacon was cooking in the skillet. It was just like, okay, this is it. I have arrived. All the kids were gone. The house was quiet. It's like this is it. This is it. And I really want to share the ability to go on and I've really tried to lay out the website to where it makes sense to people who are into specialty coffee, but it also makes sense to people who it might be their first exposure, like try to explain it a little bit more. Hey, this is a breakfast blend. Hey, this is this is when I say single origin, this is where it's coming from. And these flavor notes, we're not saying it's blueberry flavored. It's just saying, hey,
Right.
if you're slightly turned on, you might be able, if you're switched on to coffee a little bit, you might be able to pick up on some of these citrusy notes or the acid, the different brightness that you get from more acidic, varieties or the floral varieties from, Africa or stuff. But we've got a question up there. We've got some applause from somebody there, I think, on your home team. Andrea's clapping for you guys. And then one of my buddies is up there, Ricardo. He says, how did he learn to roast? So how did you learn to roast, Kyle?
Yeah, so I was working as a barista and was getting coffee for free from the coffee shop I worked at every week, and then I stopped working there, and I quickly found myself like I started depleting my stock that I built up, and I was like, man, I'm gonna break the bank if I have to buy coffee every week. And so I started trying to figure out what I could do, and I saw somebody say that you could pop or use a popcorn popper to roast coffee. And so I had one, like an old one, and I went and found some green coffee at Whole Foods. I was living in Austin, Texas at the time. Went to Whole Foods. They have a green coffee section there, and bought some and started roasting. And I was like, man, I'm never going back after this. And so I started there, and then I've like a lot of what I've done has been self-taught. Like I've spent so much time like digging into forums and reading different people's theories on stuff on the forums, and uh, I was finally able to go to a class a while back that was really it was a few years ago that I got to go, and it was one of those times where like you're kind of by yourself and learning, and then you go and join a community that's learning similar things, and everybody's talking about the same things that you've been theorizing about in your mind, and like it all just came together. And so man, there aren't a lot of books out there on roasting, not like volumes and volumes by any means, but there's a lot of stuff online just about different theories. and that's one of the beautiful things to me about coffee, I think, is you can approach it in any type of way, right? Like you can have the people who put cream and sugar in their coffee, and there is not a thing wrong with that, you know. And there's people who roast really, really dark, and I don't necessarily prefer it, but there's nothing wrong with it, if that's how they're gonna go, right? And so it's one of those things where when we talk about learning how to roast and that sort of thing, um, it's kind of a shotgun spray of ideas that are out there, and as I got into it further and further, I started gravitating toward a couple of different theories and a couple of different approaches to roasting. And I've talked to several people about those approaches, and they don't buy into them at all. And so it's like, well, okay, that's all right, you know. Like, I found something. I found like at least an initial approach to roasting that has worked for us and for our company, and we've gotten really good feedback from. And so, but at the same time, like it's this this moving target, because as much as is out there, there's always new stuff that's coming out. Like one of the things about coffee, like we're just getting to a place where there's more than one or two people that are delving into coffee science, you know. And like for the longest time it was just, I just want some coffee, you know. But like, and there aren't people who there's not just a lot of money out there to throw at coffee research, because it's seen as such a luxury item. And so yeah, that's the long way to say I did a ton of like self education trying to figure out what to do. And then like I think one of the things that has been most instrumental in my roasting is like not being scared to mess up, because you have to be ready to burn a roast or under roast a roast to be able to get to the final one.
Awesome. Excellent answer. Excellent answer. So I've got one of my home team people here. My wife says, "What are your favorite flavor profile notes profile notes, and from which regions do you prefer to source your or achieve them from?" Hold on, let me pull that back up. There we go. What are your favorite flavor profile notes, and from which regions do you prefer to source to achieve them?
Oh man,
It's a hard question. Thanks to my wife for the
well,
hard
and part
question.
of the problem, you know, we get asked this in different ways all the time. You know, what's your favorite um, offering that you guys have, or what's your favorite origin, or whatever? And it's a tough answer, and that's why I think we've had so much fun. Like I described earlier, trying to put together a supply chain, because it's just enjoyable to try different origins, and so it's difficult for me to narrow it down. I mean, definitely to me the Central American, you know, we have the Honduran, the Finca Las Joyas right now, but the Central American is definitely a really nice Central American. Is a very familiar, comforting cup of coffee, and it has those familiar notes that we here in North America are pretty accustomed to,
Hmm.
because we do drink so much of it. And so for me in the mornings, I prefer a Honduran, because I prefer out of our offerings, you know, the Honduran, um, and because it's familiar, that chocolatey, that creaminess that it has, and that nuttiness that it has. And then later in the day, personally, that's when I would rather try something like our Myanmar that has a little bit more of a fruitiness to it, a little sweeter, a little less acidic, and just the more adventurous, if you will, coffees that we've had offered over time. How would you answer that?
Yeah, one of the things that I am always a sucker for is complexity. So it's not just like, it might not just be super bright, or it might not just be super full bodied, but like somewhere a mixture of those. I'm also, I think I find myself gravitating a lot toward berry flavor notes. Um, and I'm a sucker for East African coffees, because those usually have those are pretty prominent there. Um, but that, yeah, like Dave was saying, like one of the goals that we set out to accomplish was um, to create a supply chain from places that aren't that are unique to this market, right? Honduras is starting to come up, honestly, like and it might just be since we've had ties there, but it feels like in the last couple of years, roasters in the States have started to turn their attention toward Honduras more, which is awesome because they've got some amazing coffees there. Um, but what we're finding is these unique origins that we're trying to source from, they they provide flavor notes that we wouldn't expect, like that we often don't expect to find um, in coffee, really, which is kind of fun to explore, because we can put a sample cup of Myanmar down in front of people at the market, and they say, "Well, I've never tasted Myanmar coffee," and then we can give them a taste of it, right? Like, and they're like, "Oh, this is really good coffee," right? And so it's a yeah, that uniqueness is something that's it's fun to experience with people.
I guess I'm gonna have to put an order in for it now and get it back. And y'all have y'all have a sample pack. Y'all have a 3-bag sample pack that y'all do,
That's
which is
right.
We
Yeah.
do, yeah.
phenomenal. That's I've actually sold. I think I've sold quite a few of those for
Yeah.
y'all through the website. We get those sample packs out pretty often, which is awesome. I know my wife. She's in totally in a French press. I've been getting up early just so I can make her a French press instead of the drip in the mornings. And we went through some Guatemalan the last couple of weeks because I got a big shipment in from another roaster. But we had some Tanzanian peaberry that it was like drinking warm grapefruit juice. It
Mm.
was totally citrusy, and she was not that was not her morning cup. It was going to be a bad day
Yeah.
if I made that for a morning cup. But it was really good in the afternoon. I mean, really good in the afternoon.
Yeah.
I loved it in the afternoon. I needed to do some cold brew on it. Uh, Seeing another question pop up here. So how does there's another one from your home team here. Uh, Kyle's a Q grader. What is the process like to become a Q grader? We covered that a little bit. And how does it help you in your craft? Help Atypical Coffee as a company, as a Q grader.
Sure. Yeah, so we kind of talked about the process of becoming a Q grader, um, and one of the ways that it's helped us, I feel like, and maybe Dave has different ideas on if it's helped us or not, but I feel like it gives us not a little, it gives us more discernment in our products, right? So, um, uh, like I said, that we as a roaster, I have to not be scared to mess up in the roasting, and um, so whenever we're tasting our our doing our quality control type tasting afterwards, if there's something that I messed up on, that what the training I've received has helped with is to be able to identify that. And as well, I feel like it's helped us be a little bit more discerning in terms of coffee that we're buying as well. So,
I would agree with all that. And earlier, Kyle was answering a question about how did he get into roasting, and he said that getting into different, I think you were talking about social media groups and that sort of thing, but being around industry people, it kind of helped him to start putting words to different random thoughts he'd had about things. Well, I would say from my perspective, that's what having a Curator over here is able to do, because when we're sampling, when we're cupping, generally we'll be more or less on the same page about a thumbs up or a thumbs down or whatever we're getting. But having someone who has that education, who has that training, he's able to kind of put words to the thoughts in my mind a little bit, if that makes sense, because he's got that additional training in there. So I think that it's true. It's helped us to be a bit more discerning with our decision making, and just make more clearly articulated decisions in terms of whether to move forward or not move forward, or how we're going to, what are we going to get, how are we going to buy it, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it definitely helps with the descriptive terms. I know for a fact, and sometimes when I'll be looking at the color wheel, and be like, do I taste that, or is it there? And my second experience with the Curator was the gentleman who taught our class at Blended In, and I'm not even going to try to say his name because I'll be able to butcher it 6 ways, but he was talking about one of the roasts that we were having that he happened to pick up at Starbucks, and he was like, he's like, there's definitely some burnt rubber. It tastes like discount tire in the cup, and everybody's all like, oh my God, that's exactly what I taste a tire store. And that's what it was. It wasn't necessarily bad until they put the word discount tire associated to it. I was like, yep, okay,
well,
I've got it.
And the flip side of that is true, because there'll be times where I'll be trying to think of what I'm trying to say, and I'll be like, it's, I don't know, it's citrusy, and then eventually he'll let me try for a while, and then eventually he'll be like, so maybe like lemon rind, like that's what it is. That's what it is. Yep. That sort of thing happens on the other side of it as well.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to get a new coffee that I haven't ever had. And then I sit there, and I'm a cream and sugar guy first thing in the morning. But if it's something I haven't ever had before, I'm going to have at least half the cup, or if not more than half the cup, with no cream or no sugar. That way I can taste the coffee. And then I'll go back and try it later on, different pour over methods or whatever, to get the full flavor profile out of it. Because there's just so much going on in coffee. And I want everybody to understand that it's not just, oh, that's a strong cup. That's I really like it dark, and I really like it bold. I'm like, okay, well, what do you like about that? Is there something else you like about it, or what can we do?
mm-hmm.
When y'all are doing that flavor testing, or when y'all are giving out samples at the farmers market, y'all got to get that on social media. I know you're running a shop and running a stand and doing all that hard stuff, but that's one of my goals one of these days, is to be able to do a pour over pop-up at farmers markets and have 6 or 7 different roasts from 6 or 7 different roasters, and be like, okay, try this one. What do you see? Try this one. What do you taste? Try that one. Oh, that's instant coffee. No, but taste the difference between something that was on the shelf for 3 to 6 months, or something that literally was roasted 4 days ago and got to my mailbox and it was still warm from the roasting process, because it's such a difference when you get that fresh roasted coffee, as opposed to something that was sitting on the shelf for months and months and months.
Yep.
Maybe even before it showed up to sit on the grocery store shelf for months and months and months. One of the things that always gets asked, and you always see, is which one has more caffeine, dark roast or light roast and how that works, but how much caffeine really is in a cup of coffee?
Well, so it depends on who you ask, honestly. A lot of the research though says that there's that green coffee has caffeine that's already built into the structure of the bean or of the seed, and as you roast it, that starts to come out more. And for the longest time, people said that light roasts had more caffeine, but because as you progress in the roast, the organic compounds would get broken down the darker you got with the coffee, and so that meant that the caffeine was broken down. But in probably the last 5 to 10 years or so, that's kind of been dispelled to now it's essentially the same, light or dark, whichever one. But people often will say they feel like they get more caffeine from uh, a lot of people will say they feel like they get it more from light roast, um, and that might be because for several reasons, but maybe because they're not having to use as much cream and sugar, and it's actually they're ingesting more coffee, right? I'm not sure what goes into that, but from my understanding, they say somewhere between 3 to 5 grams of caffeine, or I think that's the measurement that they're using these days.
Awesome. Awesome. I know I watched one of my associates that I've been talking to from Rube's Good Brain Coffee, I believe it is. He did it on Facebook Live the other day and was talking about it. And he's like, look, if you're drinking this, the double strength or, I don't, there's a bunch of brands out there and it's mostly Robusto is what they're
Yeah.
using to get this,
Yeah.
double the caffeine as normal coffee. Well, they're using lesser quality flavor coffee that has a higher caffeine content. He's like, save your money, get some caffeine pills.
Right.
Get some
Yeah.
caffeine pills, buy better coffee that actually has really good flavor profile, and just take the caffeine pills if you're after the buzz for
Yeah.
it. And I was like, well, that's a good way to look at it. That's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
Uh,
They say that robusta, however you want to say that, depending on what part of the country you're in, it has almost double the caffeine as Arabica beans. So I guess it has that going for it.
I've had it side by side. We had it in our tasting, our introduction to coffee course, and you could just it had flavor, but it was gone like that. Like it was a sip,
Yeah.
and you had the coffee flavor. You're like, oh, that's coffee, and then it was gone. There was no aftertaste. There was no aroma going through your palate. There wasn't any of that really good full bodiness to it. It was just coffee in there, and that's how a lot of other brands uh, uh, advertise that twice the strength in caffeine is because they're using in some cases a cheaper coffee to
Yeah.
get that to achieve that. Um, do you have a favorite way to brew coffee?
Good one.
You know, I would say one of my favorite ways definitely is the old school French press. I just love the oiliness of it that you get out of that, and it just gives it a fuller mouthfeel to it. And I think for me anyway, it can enrich the flavors that you're getting out of it, if it's done well and if it's done right. Obviously, you can over extract and get a pretty bitter cup if you're not careful. So that's not cutting edge, the old school way, but that's one of my favorites. With you.
Yeah, so yeah, it kind of depends on when, like how much time I have to prepare. So um, like an AeroPress is probably the most flexible of the brewing methods, just because it's so versatile in terms of like where you can take it, how long it takes, all that sort of thing, the numerous ways you can make it. Um, and so that one's up there. I do like the body of a French press. But so I get kind of annoyed with the soot at the bottom of my cup. Um, and so the clever dripper is kind of a nice middle ground on that front. And one of the things that we've done actually in some of our public cuppings that's been fun to do, riffing off of the traditional French press, is we'll do a traditional French press where you plunge it, and then James Hoffman has a kind of a revised French press technique.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've seen that or not.
Seen it. Oh yeah.
Have you
Oh
watched?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And so we do it side by side, and people are just like blown away with the difference in cup quality. Because like when you're doing a proper cupping in a lab or whatever, um, it's very reminiscent of James Hoffman's method of French
Mm-hmm.
press. It's clean. It's going to get all the body that you would need to be able to analyze it, and there's not the soot involved. And so anyway, that's been fun to do as
Mhm.
well.
What coffee do you prefer to do a French press with?
Mm.
Yeah, it goes back to the time of the day question. I mean, like I said, you said that your wife was not having the Tanzanian. I think you said it was
Yeah.
first thing in the morning. Um, and again, I think it does depend. I mean, I'm more in the afternoon. I would want something that's a little bit more citrusy, floral, fruity, like a Tanzanian. But in the morning, I'm probably more gonna lean towards a Central American of some sort. But I would be fine either way. On the French press itself.
What do you typically use for a ratio on a? Do you do weight ratios?
Yeah,
What's your ratio that you're shooting for typically on a French press?
usually I'll say somewhere around 15 or 16 to 1.
Okay, I'm right there with you.
Yeah, if I'm preparing for myself, it's usually standard 15. For other people, I'll probably go a little bit higher though.
Like at market, we'll often do about an 18 to 1.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's awesome. One of these days, I'm going to have to come up there, and so I'm I'm originally from about, I think it's like 90 miles north of you guys. So if we ever get back up there, every time we do something, what last year we were going to come up and it snowed, like the one time in Texas that it ever like snowed in Houston, and it's like, oh no, not leaving the house. And
Yeah.
then we were supposed to come up for Thanksgiving this year, and my 2-year-old decided to break her femur. So we weren't going anywhere in a
No.
half body cast. So we're good now. But one of these days I'll get up there and come hang out with y'all and do
Come
some
on,
Yeah.
we'll
do
have
some
you for
stuff.
sure.
Awesome. Um, do y'all have a coffee that your roast that you prefer for cold brew, and what is your method of making cold brew coffee?
Yeah, so we get asked this question. Dave mentioned it a little bit earlier, but we get asked this question a lot at the farmers market, and just in general when people talk to us about our coffee. Hey, what's your darkest roast? And like our approach has always been, if the best way to roast this coffee is to roast it dark, like if that's how it tastes best, that's how we'll do it. If we figure out that it tastes better as a medium, like medium light roast, if that's where, if that's the sweet spot of it, where it's tasting the best, we're stopping there. We're not going any further than that, just to try to please a certain group. Because when almost, I would say probably 85 to 90% of the time when someone comes to us and says, hey, what's your darkest roast? And we say, well, most of our coffees are medium light, but this one is more full bodied like a dark roast, and we think that this one might be up your alley. Like literally 85 to 90% of the time, people are like, oh yeah, we really like this one. And so we found that helping people understand, you might not necessarily like all dark roast. You might actually like some medium roast or maybe even some light roast, but there are certain qualities in the coffee that you enjoy that might be found in other things other than a dark roast. Mm-hmm. And so to that point, whenever we do cold brew, it's usually we kind of do a revised method, kind of an atypical method of that. And for cold brew, we tend to like something with some acid to it, some acidity to it, because as smooth and delicious as cold brew can be, like we find that we kind of miss the acidity of it because it's so muted in cold brew. So we actually do kind of a warm bloom of about 145 degree water on the coffee, and we let it steep for about 15 minutes, and then we filter it off and we chill it, and it has the smoothness of a normal cold brew, but it also is it's also nice and there's still some nice acidity that comes with it.
Awesome. What weight ratio do you usually use for your ice water to coffee ratio?
Yeah, so usually 2 ounces of water to 1 liter. I'm sorry, 2 ounces of coffee to 1 liter of water. Right. So a lot of times we'll do like a 6 ounce, like just for a single pitcher, 6 ounce batch of coffee with 3 liters of 145 degree water. Let it steep for 15 minutes, filter it off, and you can drink it right then. If you let it cool in the refrigerator, though, it's dynamite.
I've been hitting the afternoon iced coffees with my AeroPress, just brewing a shot right over the ice. I've figured out there's a glass that I use. I fill the glass up all the way with ice and do it's like 150 grams of water to 25 or 30 grams of coffee, and it's perfect. It's not a lot. I don't get a lot, but it's a nice cup in the afternoon. That's really, really good.
Yeah.
Let's see. We're almost out of time here. Here's the question that everybody gets asked. For someone new to fresh roasted coffee, to specialty coffee or third wave, we talked about third wave last show. Somebody new to the fresh roasted coffee game, what would you recommend they try to start out with?
Atypical coffee.
There we go. Sample pack. There we go. Nice. Also, where are y'all carried locally there in Little Rock?
So yeah, we're at the Green Corner store, and we are in the Arkansas Local Food Network, and we have a few others that are in the hopper that we're waiting to be able to give the green light to people too. Nice. And we're at Hillcrest Farmers Market as well.
And that's there locally in Little Rock.
Yes.
Where are y'all going from here? Not tonight or tomorrow, but what's your next? Branching out a few more places, hitting more farmers markets.
Yeah. So
Staying
one
on
of
at Roasters Marketplace.
yeah, exactly. So one of the things that we're working on as well is on the green coffee side of things. So providing green coffee for small batch roasters like ourselves. And so last night actually we were on the phone with one of our friends in Honduras. Happen to have a picture here.
Yep.
He's a farmer. His name is Arnulfo Martinez, Finca Las Joyas. And we were on the phone last night just talking about the current harvest and what that looks like. And so what we're hoping to continue to add, we've been able to get some smaller size orders out in terms of green to some folks around here just doing some home roasting, that sort of thing. But that's kind of where we're hoping to go, is being able to provide green coffee for people, because in our hopes, we want to be able to get to a place where we're able to help these farmers that we know that are our friends. We want to help them the most that we can. And so we are seeing like we're limited in terms of how much roasted coffee we can sell. But if we're able to continue to buy what we buy and keep growing our roasted business, and at the same time let other people, other roasters in other parts of the country benefit from our relationships as well, and that helps us and it helps our friends at Origin as well. So
Yeah, definitely.
green coffee sales is definitely one of the things that we're hoping to do.
Awesome. Where y'all typically, where does it come into y'all guys from? Is it coming in through Houston or New Orleans?
Usually Galveston and up to Houston and then on up to Little Rock from there.
Okay, awesome.
And coming in from down there, yeah.
Well, that's awesome. I'm going to have to get on here and order some. My wife commented that we need a sample pack, so I'm going to have to get on there and do that. But I'm fixing to pop up a code on the screen here, and that code's going to be good for one sample pack to the first person who logs into the website. Let me make sure I got the code all set up correctly here on the back end of the website, and I'll make that live. And so first person that gets on and uses the code Atypical, just spelled out like that, no spaces, no caps, nothing. You'll go on there, put a sample pack in your cart, and they'll get 3 bags of coffee from me tonight.
We'll get it out.
We'll get it out. I also got the address that I owed you. Finally, it dinged up on me. So also, hey, thanks for joining us, guys. I really appreciate y'all taking the time. I know you're both really busy. Finally, good to see your faces. And so, who's taller? Y'all were explaining to me, and how tall are you?
Yeah, well, we met back in college. We were both college athletes, so we're both larger fellas. But I'm 6'10".
Okay, yeah.
I'm a measly 6'4".
Yeah, I'm good. I'm not even.
So we blend in really well. Everywhere we go.
That's good. You're like
Especially
walking billboards for Atypical Coffee.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on, guys, and everybody out there
so much.
Everybody out there in the audience. I really appreciate y'all watching tonight, and staying tuned. We had 6 viewers most of the time through here that it was counting. It was going in. We've got a bunch of likes, a bunch of comments tonight, so we really, really appreciate it. Kyle and David's coffee is the featured coffee of Roaster's Choice this month. So if you go on, and tonight's the last night, really, you can sign up for our Valentine's Day special that you'll get a Roaster's Choice, a year membership, and a Roaster's Marketplace cup if you sign up for that. And so you order it, you'll have a cup and a fresh roasted bag of Atypical coffee next week. Really cool deal. That that special, that Roaster's Choice, runs the whole month. So at any time this month, if anybody signs up for Roaster's Choice, they'll get one of your bags. Or if they can go on our website and look at Atypical, you're the top of the list. You're the top of the list when it sorts. So you've got that going for you. So you can go on it and pick out your coffee from Atypical. First person, that code's still, I haven't heard a cha-ching from my computer yet, so it's still active. But hey guys, thanks for jumping on here, and I'll talk to y'all later in the week. Everybody, thanks for watching. Cheers.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you guys.